Let's take a look at some information charts on 1inch for Brave New Coin. So 1inch is a DEX aggregator similar to ZRX. Unlike ZRX, at least until today, ZRX hadn't been multi-chain. I think they announced today they're going on Avalanche. 1inch is already multi-chain with bridging capabilities, Polygon, Arbitrum, Optimism, BSC. If I'm a DEX, I want to be multi-chain so long as it's secure, fast, cheap. You want to expose yourself to as many trading opportunities for as many people as possible. So from that perspective, I think 1inch is going in the right direction. Like any other DEX on ETH or any other chain, they are highly interoperable with wallets, hardware, software, browser wallets. You can have a direct swap market order basically, or limit orders, and it tells you, at least on the UI here, where the trade is generally the cheapest or where you're getting your best bang for your buck if you're curious as to what it looks like on other exchanges. I haven't ran the numbers on 1inch versus matcha, depth, liquidity, fees, all that stuff. Depending on what you look at, when you look at it, either one can be ahead of the other as far as having the best spread or lowest fees, stuff like that. I think matcha is great. I've used it. I think 1inch is great. I've used it. It just depends on what you're trading, when you're trading it. They all look at slightly different things. Paraswap is another lesser known DEX aggregator. It's also in the mix here. So they have a DAO, they have farming, they have pools, they have all the usual things that everybody else has from an AMM perspective. Their farming is quite limited these days. It had been much more robust in times past. And they have the usual 50-50 AMM stuff. Nothing groundbreaking here. Nothing earth-shattering. You're probably not going to participate in these over UniSushi or Badger or some other balancer, right? I think all those probably have a stronger market share than 1inch at this point. This is the active farming that's currently available on 1inch. As you can see, not much available. This is different than the AMM pools. You can see how, I can't even look at it, but previously they had many, many more pools, which is why their TVL is where it is currently, kind of just flat and unexciting. And we'll look at that a bit further in another graph. But if you were just looking at TVL and comparing that to everything else, you'd say, well, this has no TVL relative to Curve or Maker. And I think this is part of the issue why for the token price, it doesn't really matter. TVL in this case. I still struggle, I say this every DeFi video lately, I struggle to find any specific thing that matters besides just pure supply and demand. So burning is important, minting is important. Coins that have a burning mechanic generally do better. Here's TVL, according to DeBank, since January, and it's basically flat. And I guess you could say over the past 3 months, it's slowly rising, but compared to everything else, this is in the millions compared to the billions on most other chains. Now we can look at, this is just ETH, we can look at all the other variations on the different chains to see if 1inch is better TVL, but generally it's probably not explosive anyway. Trading volumes slowly rising here. Occasionally they do quite well on a daily basis. Transactions kind of flat, users flat. This is just ETH. If you look, depending on what you want to see, depending on what you want to look for, this is going to look slightly better on different chains because the fees are much lower. Transactions on Polygon here rising to near all-time highs. Users kind of flat. TVL not even on here, but none of this looks super exciting on any metric. Well, we can check Arbitrum as well, or sorry, BSC. And you'd think because of fees, it's actually doing best on BSC. That's what I'd expect. Transactions way up on BSC, users way up on BSC. BSC pulls in a ton of users and transactions. It has the highest for any DEX in all of crypto land. The question is how much of that is actually legitimate and how much of that is actually fake. It's hard to say. But again, you can see what you want to see in this stuff. This does look very good, assuming it's all real, good in that people are using it more and more and more on BSC. And if I'm a DEX aggregator, what do I care, right? Go every chain, touch as many trades as I physically can. For ETH specifically, if we look at 1inch in the purple here, it's usually in the top 3 lately. It's usually UniSushi 1inch, Curve, ZRX is a mixture of all this stuff down here, at least a few of it. But 1 inch is definitely growing in the conversation, and we can look at it on the daily. This is just limit orders. Here's LPs. I don't know why I can't see 1 inch on this site like I can on the weekly basis, like I can on the daily basis. But anyway, if we go down to the monthly level, it's also sort of absent. I can't see the 1 inch slice for some reason. But just now on any given daily basis, 1 inch volume is quite high relative to everything else. If we look at token stats on chain, transaction counts spiked during that price spike, and after that, just straight down. I don't know what this was. I still don't know what it was. I don't know what happened. I have no idea. But it looks like just a pump and dump because I have no reason to know what happened there. There was no news that I'm aware of, unless I forgot something. Just kind of bizarre how it popped up like that. But transactions are unchanged after that. Active addresses up slightly, but if you zoom in sort of on a daily basis, active addresses are just flat, right? There was a massive spike and then back down to where it was. So certainly not exciting in any regard there. NVT on a monthly basis is falling, but again, if you zoom in a little bit, it's just a mess, right? There's no real signal here. So NVT falling is bullish because that means on-chain activity is picking up relative to market cap. But if that's a flash in the pan, one and done situation, it's meaningless, and eventually this is just going to increase rather quickly once that 30-day average is gone. Over the next month, NVT is going to increase pretty substantially, I think, here. And MVRV relative to price, if you look at MVRV for DeFi across the board, which is market cap over realized cap, since January, it's continued to decline. So it really doesn't make sense in the grand scheme of things compared to everything else, because if you look at MVRV for, let's say, BTC, for example, we can match the highs here relative to highs in price. So as market cap exceeds on-chain activity greatly, 2x, 3x, 4x multiple, that's typically the top because that typically represents an increasing amount of speculation. At least that's my read on it. You can see here most of the peaks in price correspond to peaks in MVRV. Even recently, we hit 3.68 in February. Currently, MVRV is 2.6 for BTC. So for 1 inch and all of DeFi, I don't think there's enough data to understand what's going on here. So we'll see what happens over the next year if we can get a usable signal out of that. 1 inch Google Trends, obviously this isn't just the exchange, it's kind of anything else, right? But this has perked up with all-time highs in price, and it's declining recently, so that's certainly less bullish. This did spike with that price spike recently, so that tells me, yeah, this is actually measuring the exchange, not just some random phrase. So if you're bullish, you want to see this start to slowly increase again. You don't want to see it decline to multi-month lows. Looking at the technicals on the 12-hour 5200 with VPVR volume RSI. This is on Binance. You can see that insane spike in volume, all-time high for that day, I believe, for 1 inch in Binance volume. And the breakout made sense. It was already bullish on MAs. It had this pretty clean inverted head and shoulders. So it made sense that it was bullish or had a bullish continuation bias. What didn't make sense is the spike from 4 to, it's not on here, but it was around 10, I think, on a wick. That's just very odd to me. But in any case, it's now back down to 4. All of that bullishness from that day is certainly gone now. And it's back in this previous range from 3 to 5, 3 to 6, 250 to 650, whatever it is. So the probability that this has another spike to 10 plus is certainly less than other coins moving around it in a relative basis, which is why we reduced our 1 inch position on Enzyme pretty substantially. We're still holding it at a 5% allocation, but it had been at a 15% allocation. And that's the rationale behind that. On the 12-hour cloud, the reason I'm looking at the 12 hours is because there's not really enough data for the daily, but on the 12-hour cloud, this thing is risking getting back into the bearish territory. The cloud has real trouble with deciphering straight up, straight down crypto stuff. So you almost have to zoom in more to get some sort of signal here, because this thing went from going above the cloud in October to being at all-time highs to now being back below the cloud. So it's a bit of a whiplash for the cloud to figure out what's going on here. But still, once this is below the cloud, the expectation is certainly less bullish and more bearish activity from then on out until it's back above the cloud. 1-inch BTC on Binance VPVR 5200. This is the daily this time. The volume RSI, you can see massive spike in volume there as well, with RSI probably hitting close to an all-time high aside from February 2021. Previously, it had been working on some sort of inverted head and shoulder bottom, and that failed. And now it's still just kind of, it has a bearish leaning to it. It's neutral. There's tons of volume in here. They're just much better things to trade. If you have to think about it, if you have to force it and say, yeah, this is bullish, right? That's not a trade I want to take. I want to take something that's either pushing all-time lows on insane volume with a bull div, or something that's ready to flip bullish. I don't want to be on the fence about a trade when there's just many other easier things to trade. So this is a giant mess. I'd just avoid it personally, but 1-inch ETH had a mean reversion to the 200 there, and is again back in this sort of Adam and Eve W double bottom consolidation area. And I probably wouldn't touch this again until it's past all-time lows. So another case of love the protocol, love what it's doing for DeFi, love that they're going multi-chain. The more the better. The token itself, not so sure that it's going to remain bullish, especially against the BTC and ETH pairs. It'll certainly do probably okay on the USD pair. This thing looks ranging at best at the moment. We'll see if it picks up any steam towards the end of the year. But on a relative basis, there are, I think, much better things to trade at this point in time. Lastly, let me just mention the ETH BTC fund and DeFi portfolio I trade for Techme Capital and Enzyme.finance, a non-custodial portfolio management tool where you can send ETH or USDC, or just watch what I'm doing. You can see everything, including AUM performance allocations here, all the vaults I'm in on Yearn, Comp, and Aave. Here's our 1-inch position. And you can also see the trades in the trades tab down below. And you can see, let's see, 5 days ago, I took 1-inch 10% of the 15% out of the vault, and then I traded it last night when I could finally get liquidity and fees weren't insane, into a few other things here. And we're still currently holding a little bit in USDC as I'm looking to rotate into Uni and a little bit of Aave as well. So anyway, that's all for this one. Like, dislike, comment, share, subscribe, and happy trading.